So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you want to learn how to write fantasy, I think I've got a book for you. So you may already know this, but writing fiction is not the same as writing nonfiction. Writing a report or writing like a stand-up comedy routine or something like that, those take a certain kind of a skill, but writing a story is its own thing. And so rather than sleep tonight, I decided that I would outline how to write a story. So here's what I got so far. Sorry, the screen's going to be kind of weird, right? Here we go, how to write a story. So it's like these 6 books, right? And this is just the table of contents, but down here I did a more detailed outline of each chapter. So you can see, like, you know, the book that has the stuff about the outlining method, the story compass, that's a pretty hefty chunk of stuff to write about. It's going to be a long one. Versus, you know, down here at the bottom, I do case studies, author business case study and gamer business case study, and that'll be a pretty small book. And that'll be easy because it's mostly facts. And actually, a lot of this will be easy because it's nonfiction. But this is how to write a story. So talk about routine, types of practice, the core concept of, like, what is a story? Stories are about change, and change only happens under stress. So stories are about change and stress and ugly truth and all that. And if it's not a story, what do you call it? You know, I say a change means it's a story. But if it begins and ends the same way, I call that a sketch or an image. Book 2, you know, nodes and edges. Characters have behavior. This is the idea that, you know, like, each person is a node, and then they can have a relationship with the other nodes, and you call those edges. It's in graph theory and mathematics. But the nodes and the edges in the context of a story, it's going to be characters. And a character is like a node, and then the arrows, the edges, those are their behaviors toward other nodes, right? And so it's this concept of, like, this book is all about characters. So, and then the senses ladder, depth of view, expansion and contraction within depth of view, and then the outlining method, the story compass, which is what I use for everything, which is, I'll show you later, but I use it a lot. I am a rigorous outliner. And then, you know, each book ends with the routine, which is just like, you have a place and you eat something and you take a breath in, you breathe in, and you just begin. And, like, that's the routine that you need to do at the end of every day, no matter how much you've read, no matter how much you've done. That's what gives you pages and makes you into a writer. And all of this stuff is extra, right? So that's why each one of these ends with routine, because that's what's going to change your life. Book 3, I have this whole thing about poetic styles. I'll talk about audience side, which is like the viewer loop is emotion, and then sight, or whatever sense you want to attach to it. But sight's a good one to start with. You get emotion first, and then you see what you're looking at, and then logic starts to kick in, and then you loop back to emotion. And that loop is always going when someone is watching a movie or reading a book or listening to a song or something like that. And so it's just really important to understand that, and I put that right after poetic styles, so it's almost like the mechanics of the page. I talk about immersion, how to build a story world, very, very important. It's what separates you know, Star Wars from Battlestar Galactica in a way. And maybe Battlestar Galactica has a better story world, you know, but immersion and, like, how it interacts with the audience, and I'll get into it. And then ends with a routine. Book 4 is all just marketing your story world, all the marketing stuff that I've learned or want to do, and then ends with a routine. Book 5 is a pretty special one. I am my own case study, how I wrote NA'LA Saga Trilogy One, and then your turn, back to the routine. This is a special one. This is a long one just because it started off as me saying, let me show you how I use these tools. And then as I got closer and closer to the bottom, I started just listing people that I've worked with and moments in the process that make writing a book fun, that make writing a book something beautiful, and a life that I want to live, you know. And then book 6, Appendix A, I figured I'm going to have a bunch of appendices for this if I ever, you know, revise How to Write a Story, because this is, you know, How to Write a Story 2026, and I figure as my process evolves, this is sort of like a living document in a way. Each edition is a phase in my life, in the same way that Mary Shelley has 3 distinct publications of Frankenstein, and that first one in 1818 is very, very different from the ones that came after. It feels rougher, it feels more raw. A lot of people like it more. Some people like it a lot less, right? So I had sort of a vision like that with this. Appendix A, it's just case studies. And then here we go into detail with all those chapters, so I don't know, pretty exciting. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you want to learn how to write fantasy, I think I've got a book for you.